Welcome to a new episode of the King of Weighted Calisthenics Coaching Cues podcast. Today with a topic that was wished by the community, and the topic today is how to strengthen the serratus anterior muscle. So as a disclaimer, before we start talking about what you can do, we're not talking about how to clarify if really the serratus anterior is the problem. That is an even more complex topic. We may talk about this in the future. So the foundation of this episode here is that you really know you have a serratus anterior issue. And yeah, at first we want to talk about what the serratus anterior is actually responsible for in our body and where it is located. And do you want to start with that?
Sure. The serratus, as you're probably familiar with, is the muscle that is sitting right next to your lats and to your obliques. So it's located on the lateral part of your rib cage, and it is responsible for a couple of motions, such as the upward rotation of the scapula. We've got scapular abduction. We've got also, which is the upward rotation of the scapula, and it is also responsible for expanding the rib cage. And when I'm saying it is responsible for expanding the rib cage, we're talking about external rotation of the ribs. So you can imagine a bucket and a handle, and when you are going to inflate your rib cage with air, your ribs are going to flare up like the handle from a bucket. Do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, maybe for every listener who's not familiar with what abduction and upward rotation is, we should clarify that. Scapular upward rotation is needed when you want to bring your arm overhead. As the scapula is kind of like the foundation of your arm, it always moves together with your arm. And if you want to bring it overhead, also your scapula needs to move upward, needs to rotate so that the arm has, some space to move upwards in easy words. And that is what you call scapular upward rotation. And the serratus assists with that. Scapular abduction is the same in this case now as a shoulder protraction. It's just that if you talk about scapulas only, you're talking about abduction, so the scapula is moving apart from each other. It's like moving left and right on your rib cage, around the rib cage. Then we had it as expansion muscle of the rib cage. If your scapula is fixed and it's not moving, so the rib cage becomes the movable part because the scapula is fixed because you are laying on a bench or something. And then it can help with the expansion of the rib cage. So basically making you wider. And what else? We have some notes here. Yeah, it works as an antagonist to the retraction muscles. Let's call it like this, because if it protracts, it is the antagonist to the retraction. And as we talked about in prior episodes already, if you're looking for stability, it's not enough to look at the muscle that actually moves, but also at the muscles that stabilize the opposite direction. So it has also its importance in the opposite movement direction. And that covers at least the main anatomic functions of this muscle. Sure, there's something to add, but for today, I think that's enough. And second part now is at the actual topic is how to strengthen the serratus anterior, given you have a condition like, a light scapular winging. You feel like when you're doing planches, dips, the scapula is not really tight at the rib cage. It flares slightly up. What can we do to strengthen the serratus?
So, of course, there are a couple of exercises we can use for it, such as any overhead exercise and any reaching exercise. What is a reaching exercise? Anything where you're going to protract your scapula, like during a scapular push-up, for example, but also any movement where you're going to drive the arm overhead and you're bringing in some protraction, as you would do some kneeling landmine presses, and you would protract your scapula and push upwards, for example. But it also works with other motions such as a dumbbell overhead press, pike push-ups or handstand push-ups. So there are plenty of exercises where you can train the serratus, but specifically you want to have the arms in front of you and move them away or up to the ceiling.
Yeah, because if you do that, like this, what Lois called the reaching exercises, especially if you're doing it with the elbows in front of your body and going up, you kind of combine upward rotation and protraction to a certain degree. And if you want to train a muscle, just take a look at the anatomic functions of it and try to mimic that with an exercise. And that is basically what you do. So if you're looking for strengthening the serratus anterior, the most simplest answer you can give someone is train your shoulder joint through full range of motion. Because when the shoulder joint moves, scapula is moving, and when the scapula is moving, your serratus will move. So the first thing you should do when you have a weakness in your serratus anterior is take a look at your program and see if you have those movement patterns in, if you maybe lack in certain of these areas, and then before working with tons of pre-activation stabilization exercises, your job will be to move your shoulder under load in different planes, different range of motions with the exercises that we just told you. And on top of that, of course, also, as we said, in the opposite direction. So it's not enough to also to only work with reaching, overhead pressing, pushing exercises. You also need to work with rowing exercises or pulling exercises, again, over full range of motion. And then I don't have like a evidence-based number here, but then like most of the cases from our experience, your problem will be gone within a matter of weeks, maybe months, depending on your conditions. But Lois, if it's not a weakness, but an activation problem, so my body just doesn't know how to use that muscle, and actually its strength is not a problem, what can I do?
You can do activation exercises like proprioception exercises that can be used to really warm those areas up that are needed for the training ahead. So we were referring already to some of the exercises. So of course you can implement all the exercises we just mentioned before because they're going to train your serratus.
Just do it a bit lighter, of course.
Yeah, of course you should do it a little bit lighter or with no weight at all or with some easy bands, whatever you have in hand. But in general, we will tell you our favorites, which are scapular push-ups. You can do them in a plank position or in a half kneeling position and so on. So you can scale them really towards your own needs. And other exercises like serratus punches, where you're going to lay on the floor with a resistance band around your upper back and you can push forward, or just going for the reaching part. As for some people, that might be enough already. But also isometric holds with a cable or a band could be a good idea, or pressing your hands against the wall, like reaching forward and going for some isometric holds. And yeah, so I think these are some good things which you can implement. Of course, don't spend too much time on these exercises because these are pre-activation exercises and they should pre-activate the muscle and not fatigue it right away, because if it's too fatigued, you might run into the same issues as you were running into before. And yeah.
Last part maybe is telling you how do you know if you have a strength problem or an activation problem. The easiest test is go with some pre-activation and see if you solve the issue. Then it's most likely really just like a neurological issue that your central nervous system was not, for whatever reasons, that's again another topic, not able to use this muscle properly. Then a bit of scap push-ups, some iso holds will already make you feel a lot more stable. That scapular winging is probably already not that obvious anymore, not that visual anymore. If pre-activation is not helping once you apply load, you can be pretty sure that if you're with all other conditions healthy, that it's a weakness in your serratus anterior and the structures that work together with it, and then you need to strengthen it with the exercises that we just told you. An important thing that I want to mention here is that the human body is hell complicated. It's a very, very complex mechanism, and most likely it's not accurate to just point at a certain muscle and say, this is the problem, this is the cause. Usually think more of it movement-based. Certain movements are not working. Learn to use certain movement patterns better. Then you're most likely more accurate than just pointing at a certain muscle. For your own sake, this will definitely be the better approach, because otherwise you're getting crazy with over 200 muscles in the human body. Yeah. Any last words?
No, I think that rounds it up pretty well. And
then, as always, if you like this episode, it would be nice to have a 5-star review on Spotify, so our podcast is ranked up. And if you want to work with us as your coaches to fix an issue that can be related to your serratus or any kind of other injuries that you already have diagnosed, or if you just want to improve your performance, then feel free to check our New Year's offer. It's on the website. Website is linked. Schedule your free consulting call and we talk about it, and then see you in the next episode.
Bye-bye.